The night my father shook hands with the director of the Columbus Dance Collective and got me quietly removed from their spring showcase, he did it with a smile on his face and a glass of scotch in his hand. That's the part that stayed with me. Not the rage, not the tears I cried in my car afterward. The smile. My name is Chris Fox. In the spring of 2018, I was 23 years old, living in Columbus, Ohio, with a theater arts degree from Ohio State, a burning obsession with contemporary dance, and a last name that opened every door in Franklin County, and then quietly closed it behind me. The Fox family wasn't old money. My father, Gerald Fox, built his wealth the hard way. 2 companies, both successful, both headquartered in Columbus. The first was Fox Logistics, a regional freight and warehousing operation with contracts across the Midwest. The second was Cedar Point Properties, a commercial real estate firm my mother Donna co-managed. Together, they employed close to 200 people. They sat on boards. They donated to charities. They were photographed at galas. And they had one son. Me. I was supposed to be the heir. That was never a question in our house. It was a given, the way the sky is blue and Ohio winters are miserable. Gerald Fox built 2 companies so that one day Christopher Fox would run them. That was the plan. That had always been the plan. The problem was that nobody asked me. I had been dancing since I was 9 years old. Not casually, not as an extracurricular to round out a college application. Seriously, by the time I was 16, I was training 6 days a week at the Westerville Dance Academy, studying contemporary, jazz, and West African movement styles. I was good. Not good for a rich kid. Good. Genuinely good. My instructor, Miss Rita Chambers, told my parents when I was 17 that I had professional potential. My father nodded politely, wrote the tuition check, and went back to his phone. I earned my theater arts degree from Ohio State in May 2017 and graduated at 22. My parents attended the ceremony in matching navy. My mother cried, genuinely, warmly. My father took photos. Then, over dinner at a steakhouse on Broad Street, he slid a manila envelope across the table. Fox Logistics needs a new operations coordinator, Gerald said, cutting into his ribeye. You'd start at $72,000. We'll move you to a corner office by the end of the year. I pushed the envelope back. Dad, I want to dance professionally. He looked at me the way you look at a GPS that's recalculating after you've clearly missed the turn. You want to what? I want to audition. Build a portfolio, maybe join a company, or form one. I've been talking to people. There are real opportunities in Christopher. That one word from my mother, her voice carrying that particular softness that meant the conversation was over. We didn't pay for 4 years at Ohio State so you could prance around a stage. It's not prancing, Mom. It's not a career, my father said, and that was that. For the next several months, from June 2017 through early 2018, I did both. I showed up at Fox Logistics 3 days a week, learned enough about freight routing to be dangerous, and spent every other hour auditioning, training, and building relationships in the Columbus art scene. I was careful. I didn't make waves. I paid my own rent on a 1-bedroom apartment in the Short North neighborhood, a few miles from our family home in Upper Arlington. I was determined to prove I could do this without a safety net. By February 2018, I had something real. The Columbus Dance Collective, a well-regarded mid-sized company that performed at the Southern Theater downtown, was holding auditions for their spring showcase. It was a proper paying engagement, 2 weekend performances. Choreography credit, the kind of thing that goes on a resume and opens conversations. I auditioned on a Tuesday afternoon and I was, without any false modesty, excellent. The artistic director, a woman named Sandra Hoyt, pulled me aside afterward and said the words I had been waiting years to hear. We'd love to have you in the program, Chris. I didn't tell my parents. I should have known better than to think they wouldn't find out. 3 days after Sandra's call, my father appeared at my apartment door unannounced. He had apparently already spoken to my building manager, a man named Phil Greer, who let him into the lobby without question because Phil Greer's company had a warehousing contract with Fox Logistics. Walk with me, my father said. We sat in his car, a black Lincoln Navigator parked on Buttles Avenue. He didn't raise his voice. He never raised his voice. I had lunch with Carl Whitmore yesterday, he said. Carl Whitmore was on the board of the Columbus Arts Foundation, which provided partial funding to the Columbus Dance Collective. Carl mentioned your name came up in connection with a spring showcase. Dad, I told him there must have been a miscommunication. I stared at him. You told him what? That my son would not be available, that you've accepted a full-time position at Fox Logistics. I was out of that car before he finished the sentence. I called Sandra Hoyt the next morning. Her assistant informed me that due to a change in program funding, my spot in the showcase had been filled. That was the moment I understood what I was dealing with. Over the next 4 months, from March through June 2018, I watched it happen 2 more times. A summer intensive workshop at the Wexner Center for the Arts, canceled 2 days after I enrolled. Funding redirected. A paid performance opportunity with an independent choreographer named Derek Walsh. Derek called me himself to apologize, voice tight with discomfort, saying a private sponsor had withdrawn at the last minute. I knew whose phone calls those sponsors had received. I knew whose name carried the weight that made grown adults uncomfortable enough to comply. I didn't yell at my father. I didn't beg my mother. I sat with it for 2 weeks. Then I made a decision. If Columbus was Gerald Fox's city, I needed to find a different city. A different country. I spent 3 weeks researching, quietly and methodically. I had saved $14,000 from my work at Fox Logistics and a few small paid gigs before the walls closed in. I had my Ohio State degree. I had a passport, and I had absolutely nothing keeping me in Ohio except a family that had decided my life belonged to them. Spain was not a random choice. Barcelona specifically had one of the most vibrant contemporary dance scenes in Europe, the Mercat de les Fleurs performance venue, the Institut del Teatre, a sprawling community of independent dance companies and choreographers. More importantly, Spain had no Fox Logistics contracts. Carl Whitmore had no contacts there. My father's Lincoln Navigator couldn't follow me across the Atlantic. On July 14, 2018, I packed 2 duffel bags, bought a one-way ticket to Barcelona, and took a cab to Port Columbus International Airport. I didn't call my parents. I texted my father one line from the departure gate. I'm going to live my life. Please don't try to stop this one. He called 4 times before my plane pushed back from the gate. I didn't answer. I didn't know it yet, but I was 23 years old, flying toward the only version of my life that would ever feel like mine. If you've made it this far, do us one quick favor. Subscribe. A lot of people watch without ever doing it, but it costs you nothing and means everything to us. Thank you. Genuinely, Barcelona smelled like salt water, diesel, and something fried. I landed at El Prat Airport on the morning of July 15, 2018. Exhausted, jet-lagged, with 2 duffel bags, a Spanish phrase book, and roughly enough confidence to fill a medium-sized coffee cup. I had booked 2 weeks in a hostel in the Gracia neighborhood, a compact, walkable district in the upper part of the city, with narrow streets, tiled squares, and balconies draped with laundry and potted geraniums. It was nothing like Upper Arlington. I loved it immediately. The first week was humbling. My Spanish was functional but clumsy. I didn't know anyone. I spent mornings walking and afternoons sitting in on open movement classes I found posted on community boards near the Institut del Teatre in the Raval district. Most of the dancers were younger than me or spoke no English. I communicated mostly through the universal language of watching someone move and nodding like I understood exactly what just happened. It was during one of those open classes, on a Wednesday afternoon in late July 2018, that I met Sofia Reyes. Sofia was 24, Cuban-American, originally from Miami. She had come to Barcelona 18 months earlier after a falling out with her own family, a story I would learn in pieces over the following weeks. She was a fluid, precise dancer with a background in Afro-Cuban and contemporary styles, and she had the kind of stage presence that made you forget to look at anyone else in the room. She was also brutally, efficiently honest. I discovered this when she tapped my shoulder after class and said, in perfect English, "Your transitions are lazy. You're rushing the landing." "Thanks," I said. "I've been traveling for 19 hours, so I'll take that as a compliment." "It wasn't," she said, and then she smiled. But your instincts are good. Come back Thursday. I came back Thursday. And Friday. And every day the following week. Sofia had built real connections in the Barcelona dance community. She introduced me to her network, independent choreographers, venue managers, festival coordinators. She was generous with those introductions in a way I hadn't experienced in Columbus, where every professional door seemed to require someone else's permission. Barcelona didn't know my father's name. Barcelona didn't care. By September 2018, 2 months after I landed, I was rehearsing with a small independent company called Moviment Liure, Catalan for Free Movement, a 7-person group that performed at fringe venues around the city. The pay was modest, very modest. I lived on savings, a part-time English tutoring gig in the Example district, and the stubborn determination of a man with absolutely no intention of going home to prove his father right. Sofia and I grew closer through that autumn. We trained together daily, critiqued each other without mercy, and somewhere around November 2018, sitting on the steps of the Basilica de Santa Maria del Mar after a late rehearsal, sharing a paper bag of roasted chestnuts from a street vendor, I realized the situation had changed. "You miss Ohio?" she asked. "I miss the food sometimes," I said. "Skyline chili. You can't get that here." "I don't know what that is. It's chili on spaghetti. It sounds wrong, but it's correct." She laughed, genuinely, not politely. I filed that away. Back in Columbus, my parents had not been quiet. My mother left voicemails I let run to completion without returning, long emotional messages cycling through disappointment, worry, and occasional guilt in the same breath. My father's communications were shorter and more deliberate, texts that mentioned business decisions, property transfers, and the future of Fox Logistics, as if reminding me what I was walking away from. In January 2019, 6 months after I left, my father's assistant sent a formal letter to my Barcelona address, obtained from my aunt, my mother's sister, who I had made the mistake of staying in touch with. The letter stated that if I did not return to Columbus by March 1, 2019, and assume a leadership role at Fox Logistics, I would be formally removed from the family's estate planning. I read the letter twice. Then I used it as a coaster for my coffee mug. By the spring of 2019, Movement Liure had grown. We added 2 dancers, a French-Moroccan woman named Yasmin and a technically extraordinary British dancer named Owen, and our performances were gaining real traction. We performed at the Festival Grec in July 2019, Barcelona's premier summer performing arts festival held at the Teatre Grec Amphitheatre on Montjuic Hill. It seated several hundred people, and we sold it out. Both nights. I was 24. I had found my city, my company, and my person. Sofia and I started dating quietly in the spring of 2019, the way people do when they're afraid to admit something good is actually happening. I didn't know it yet, but the life my father had tried to build for me was becoming more distant every single month, and the one I was building was becoming more real. The years moved carefully and with intention. By 2021, Sofia and I had formally co-founded what would become Companyia Fox Reyes, a contemporary dance company based in Barcelona's Sant Pere neighborhood. We had 7 full-time dancers, a fiscal sponsor, and a growing reputation on the European festival circuit. We choreographed original works. We taught workshops. We were invited to perform in Madrid, Lisbon, and Lyon. In December 2022, Sofia and I married at a small ceremony at the Jardins de l'Arribal on Montjuic. Terraced gardens overlooking the city, orange trees heavy with fruit. About 20 people in attendance. It cost less than one of my father's quarterly business lunches and was the best day of my life by a wide margin. I called my parents the day before to tell them. My mother said she would pray for us. My father said nothing. There was a long pause and then a click. That was fine. I didn't need an RSVP. By 2024, Companyia Fox Reyes had 9 dancers, a small administrative staff, and invitations to 3 international festivals. We were not rich, we were not famous, but we were working artists sustaining a real creative enterprise, and every month we made payroll without help from anyone named Fox, except me, and I had earned my half of the name. Then, in March 2025, our production manager Bridget Torres forwarded me an email with the subject line, "Performance Invitation, Gala Celebra, Madrid 2025. Gala Celebra was an annual black tie gala hosted by a consortium of American and Spanish business leaders. The kind of event where deals got sealed over cava and handshakes, where companies celebrated partnerships, and where wealthy families flew in from across the United States to feel cosmopolitan for a weekend. It was held each spring at the Palacio de Cibeles in Madrid, a stunning Beaux-Arts building in the heart of the city. The invitation was to perform a 20-minute contemporary piece as the evening's cultural program. The fee was substantial, the most we had ever been offered for a single performance. The event was scheduled for Saturday, May 17th, 2025. I accepted without hesitation. I didn't look at the sponsoring organization's list. If I had, I would have seen two familiar names, Fox Logistics and Cedar Point Properties. I found out my parents would be in the audience 11 days before the performance. It was Sophia who saw it. She was reviewing the Gala Celebra attendee program, a printed booklet the organizers sent to all performing groups, sitting at our kitchen table in our apartment in Saint-Péray on a Thursday evening in early May 2025. She went very quiet. "Chris, yeah, come look at this." I came and looked. There, in the list of corporate sponsors and honored guests attending the gala, were Gerald and Donna Fox of Columbus, Ohio, representing Fox Logistics and Cedar Point Properties. There was a small headshot beside each name. My father, 58 years old, looked older than I remembered, more gray at the temples, heavier around the jaw. My mother looked exactly the same. She had always been the kind of woman who aged with precision, like she had filed paperwork with time itself. I sat down. "Do you want to pull out?" Sophia asked. Not with drama, practically the way she approached everything. I thought about it for exactly 45 seconds. Then, "No, we perform." "Are you sure?" "I've been sure since July 14th, 2018. She squeezed my hand and went back to marking up the choreography notes. "Here is what I did not do. I did not call my parents to warn them. I did not engineer a dramatic confrontation. I did not reach out to the gala organizers to explain the situation. I simply prepared. We had 2 weeks of intensified rehearsal ahead of us. I poured everything I had into those 2 weeks. The piece we were performing was called Queda, Portuguese for fall, though it borrowed from multiple movement languages. It was the product of 8 months of development, a duet between Sophia and me that opened with stillness, fractured into controlled chaos, and resolved in something that looked, if we did it right, like Grace won from wreckage. It was the best work we had ever made. Saturday, May 17th, 2025. The Palacio de Cibeles, Madrid. We arrived at the venue at 4 in the afternoon for sound and lighting checks. The building is extraordinary up close. Limestone and granite, arched windows, a central tower that catches the last light of the afternoon like it was designed specifically for that purpose. The performance space had been set up inside the main hall, a vast room with marble floors and vaulted ceilings, round tables arranged for the gala dinner, and a professional stage at one end. I was doing the final floor walk when I heard them. My father's voice first, that measured, unhurried baritone he used in professional settings, the voice that closed contracts and ended arguments. Then my mother's laugh, the social one, a note higher than her real laugh. I looked up. They were crossing the lobby with a small group. Business associates, all in event attire. My father wore a charcoal suit. My mother wore a deep burgundy dress. They hadn't seen me. I went back to my floor walk. "You've been preparing for this since you were 9 years old," I told myself. "You've just been waiting for the right stage." We performed at 8:45 p.m., after dinner and before the award presentations. The hall held approximately 300 guests, the kind of crowd that comes to these events to be seen as much as to see, which means they're not always the most attentive audience. We had performed for tougher rooms. The lights went down. The music started, a composition by our Barcelona-based sound collaborator, layered and building, something between a heartbeat and a tide. We danced. I won't pretend to false modesty here. We were extraordinary that night. Sophia moved with the kind of precision that makes trained dancers in the audience lean forward involuntarily. The duet section, 12 minutes of continuous movement requiring physical contact for over 40 consecutive counts, landed exactly as we had rehearsed it 100 times in our studio. The final sequence, where we both fell and recovered in opposing rhythms until the music stopped, produced the silence that a performer learns to recognize. The silence of an audience that forgot to breathe. Then the applause started. Not polite, this is pleasant applause. The kind that begins with one person who can't wait and then pulls everyone in behind it. Someone stood. Then more people. By the time Sophia and I took our second bow, most of the hall was on its feet. I let myself look. My father was standing. His hands were at his sides, and he was staring at the stage with an expression I had never seen on Gerald Fox's face in 30 years. It took me a moment to identify it. It was recognition. My mother had both hands over her mouth. The Gala Celebra Committee announced their annual Arts Recognition Awards immediately following the performances. Compañía Fox Reyes received the Premio de Excelencia Artística, the award for artistic excellence, presented by the Cultural Affairs Director of the Gala, Dr. Marta Solis, who said into the microphone that our piece represented the most emotionally precise performance the Gala Celebra stage had hosted in its 12-year history. Sophia and I stood at that microphone together. I had not prepared remarks. I looked out at the room. I found my parents immediately. Third table from the right, 7 rows back. My father was still standing. My mother was crying. Really crying, not the polished social version. "Thank you," I said into the microphone. "My wife built this company with me from nothing, in a city that gave us both a second chance, and to anyone who ever told us that what we were doing wasn't a real career, thank you for that too. It made us work harder." I did not look at my parents when I said it. I didn't need to. We were surrounded afterward. Other performers, organizers, guests who wanted to talk and hand us cards. I was deep in a conversation with a festival director from Seville when I felt a hand on my shoulder. My father. Up close. The years showed. He looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with jet lag. There was a subtle deflation in his posture, a careful way of holding himself that I didn't recognize from the man who used to slide manila envelopes across restaurant tables. "Chris," he said. My mother appeared at his elbow. Her eyes were still wet. "That was—" My father stopped. Started again. I didn't know." "Gerald," my mother said quietly. Then to me, "We owe you an apology. Both of us. A real one. Not a phone call. We owe you that in person." Sophia had appeared at my side without me noticing. She had a talent for that. She looked at my parents with the calm, steady gaze of someone who knew exactly what these two people had cost us and had decided to let me handle it. I took a breath. Then I introduced them. "Mom, Dad, this is Sophia Fox, my wife, my co-director, the reason this company exists." My mother reached out and took Sophia's hands in both of hers. "I've wanted to meet you for a long time. I'm so sorry it took this." My father put his hand out to shake mine. I shook it. "You were right," he said. The 4 most expensive words Gerald Fox had ever spoken. About the dancing. About all of it. You were right, and we were wrong. The room was loud and bright and full of strangers, and I had just won an award on a stage in Madrid. I was 30 years old. I had a company, a wife, and a life that belonged entirely to me. I didn't need him to say it, but I will not pretend it didn't matter that he did. "We have a lot to talk about," I said. "Not tonight, but we have a lot to talk about." My father nodded. My mother squeezed my arm. They moved back into the crowd, and Sophia leaned close to my ear. "How are you doing?" she asked. "Ask me in the morning," I said. "Fair enough." She handed me a glass of water. We stood together in the middle of that marble hall while the gala moved around us, and I looked up at the vaulted ceiling, all limestone and light, and thought about a 23-year-old on a plane with 2 duffel bags and a 1-line text message, and absolutely no guarantee that any of this would work. It worked. 7 years. 2 duffel bags, 1 city, 1 company, 1 extraordinary woman, and a stage that nobody could take away from me. It worked. If you liked this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories. And as always, thank you for being a part of this.